You feel like you are paying more, but cannot explain exactly where it goes. Stay with me, because this is not just inflation in the way you think. Something is quietly draining your money without ever being called a tax. And that is why it feels invisible, yet constantly present in your life. You budget, you track spending, and still something keeps slipping through. That frustration is not because you are careless with money. It is because the system extracts value in ways you were never taught to see. We call taxes visible, but most financial pressure today is not labeled. It hides inside everyday transactions that feel completely normal. Let us start with something simple that most people overlook. When prices rise, your money does not just lose value once. It loses value every time you delay using it. That is a time-based erosion most people never calculate consciously. You are effectively being charged for waiting, even when doing nothing wrong. Now add shrinkflation, where products quietly get smaller while prices stay similar. You think you are paying the same, but receiving less every single time. That difference accumulates slowly, making it hard to notice immediately. Then there are fees, small enough to ignore, but frequent enough to matter. Bank fees, service fees, delivery fees, platform fees, all stacking quietly. None of them feel like a tax, but together, they behave exactly like one, because they reduce your purchasing power without asking for your attention. Now here is where it becomes more subtle and more powerful. Your time is also being taxed, but not in the way you expect. Longer commutes due to higher fuel costs increase hidden life expenses. Waiting, searching for deals, switching services, all consume your attention. That attention is a limited resource, just like your money. And when it gets drained, your decision quality starts to decline, which leads to worse financial choices without you even noticing. This is how the system compounds pressure without appearing aggressive. You are not being hit once. You are being slowly worn down. And because each piece is small, your brain does not flag it as danger. But together, they create a continuous leak in your financial stability. So the first shift is awareness, not optimization or extreme changes. You need to start seeing where value is being extracted quietly. Not just big expenses, but small repeated ones. Because repetition is where hidden taxes become powerful. Psychologically, this matters more than it seems at first. When something is invisible, you cannot defend against it properly, so you blame yourself instead of adjusting your environment. And that keeps the system working exactly as designed. Now the next layer is where this becomes uncomfortable, because some of these hidden taxes are not accidental. They're built into how modern services and pricing models operate. And once you see that, your behavior starts to change naturally. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Because clarity removes the feeling of random financial pressure and replaces it with something much more useful. A sense of pattern, structure, and control. And that is where real financial defense actually begins. Because the system is not random, it is just rarely explained clearly. At first, these hidden costs feel like small inconveniences you can ignore. But systems are not designed around your awareness. They are designed around behavior. And behavior is easiest to influence when costs feel invisible and fragmented. This is why modern pricing rarely hits you all at once. Instead, it distributes pressure across many small, almost forgettable charges. Subscriptions are one of the clearest examples of this shift. You no longer buy products once. You rent access continuously. Each payment feels manageable, but the total becomes surprisingly large. And because it is automated, you stop actively evaluating its value. This is not accidental. It is behavioral design. Friction is reduced at the moment of spending and increased at the moment of cancellation. So money flows out more easily than it comes back. Now combine that with dynamic pricing, which adjusts based on demand and timing. Two people can pay different prices for the exact same service, but neither one feels directly overcharged in the moment, because there is no fixed reference point to compare against anymore. This removes your ability to recognize when you are paying more than expected, which quietly increases how much you are willing to tolerate. Then there is convenience, which feels like a benefit, but carries hidden costs. Faster delivery, easier checkout, bundled services all come at a premium, and that premium becomes normalized over time. So what once felt optional starts feeling necessary. This is how lifestyle inflation happens, without visible income growth. You are not choosing luxury. You are adapting to new defaults. Now here is the deeper layer most people never connect. These systems do not just take money. They shape your decision patterns. When costs are small and frequent, you stop analyzing them critically. And when analysis drops, control drops with it. This is where the hidden tax becomes psychological, not just financial. You feel busy managing life, but not fully aware of its cost structure. That creates a constant, low-level stress that feels hard to define. And undefined stress is the hardest kind to resolve. So the second shift is not cutting everything aggressively. It is restoring visibility to what has become automatic. Pause recurring payments, review them consciously, then restart only what still matters. Introduce friction back into spending where convenience removed it. Even small pauses can change how you evaluate value. If this is starting to shift how you see your daily spending, stay with this, because the next layer explains where the largest hidden tax actually sits. And it is not where most people are currently looking. It does not appear on receipts, invoices, or account statements, but it shapes your long-term financial position more than anything else. This is where the system becomes less about transactions and more about how your environment quietly guides your choices. Because once your choices are influenced, outcomes follow naturally. And by then, it no longer feels like something external. It feels like it was always your decision, which is why it is so difficult to detect. But once you see it clearly, it becomes much harder to ignore. And that is where your advantage begins to quietly form. The largest hidden tax is not in what you spend, but what you miss. It lives inside opportunities you never take because of subtle system pressure. When your attention is drained, your decision range becomes smaller over time. You choose what is easiest, not what is most beneficial long-term. That gap between easy and optimal is where real wealth disappears quietly. For example, convenience replaces planning, and planning is where savings usually begin. But when life feels fast and pressured, planning feels like a luxury. So you trade future advantage for present simplicity without realizing it. This is not laziness. It is cognitive overload shaping your behavior. And once that pattern repeats, it becomes your default decision system. Now expand this across months and years instead of single purchases. The cost is no longer visible, but the outcome becomes significant. Missed investments, delayed decisions, avoided risks, all compound silently, not because you chose wrong, but because you never fully evaluated alternatives. This is where the hidden tax becomes structural rather than transactional. Your environment shapes what feels possible, not just what you choose. And when possibilities shrink, so does your financial trajectory. Now here is another layer that feels even less obvious. Uncertainty itself acts like a tax on your future decisions. When the environment feels unstable, people naturally become more defensive. They delay action, hold back, and wait for clarity that may never come. But delay has a cost, even if it feels safe in the moment, because time continues moving while your position remains unchanged. So the system does not need to force decisions. It only needs to create enough uncertainty for you to pause. And that pause becomes lost momentum, which is difficult to recover. And this is why many people feel stuck without knowing exactly why. They're not moving backward dramatically, just not moving forward enough. And over time, that difference becomes very real. So the third shift is subtle but powerful. Reduce the friction that stops you from making small, forward decisions. Not big risks, but consistent, low-pressure movement. Because momentum is what counters the hidden tax of hesitation. Psychologically, this restores a sense of control that uncertainty removes. And control is what stabilizes behavior over long periods. Now we move into the final layer, where everything connects together. Because once you see the full structure, this stops feeling random and starts feeling like something you can navigate with awareness. Not perfectly, but with far less confusion than before. That clarity is what separates reaction from strategy. And that difference becomes more important over time, because systems do not reward awareness immediately. They reward consistency applied after awareness. And that is where most people quietly fall off, not from lack of knowledge, but from lack of sustained adjustment. So the final step is not learning more. It is applying what you already see in small, repeatable ways. Because repetition is what builds resistance to hidden extraction, and resistance is what protects your long-term position. Now everything connects in the final section. By now, you can probably feel this is not about one single expense. It is about a system that extracts value across time, behavior, and attention. The hidden tax is not one mechanism, but a network of small pressures. Each one feels harmless, but together, they reshape your financial reality. So the goal is not eliminating every hidden cost completely. That would require more energy than it actually saves. Instead, the goal is to reduce how much these systems can influence you. And that starts with one simple mental model. Anything automatic should be questioned regularly, not trusted permanently, because automation is where most hidden extraction becomes invisible. Subscriptions, habits, routines, all need periodic awareness. Not constant attention, but intentional review at the right moments. Then comes the second layer of control. Reduce decision fatigue before it reduces your financial clarity. Simplify where possible. Not to spend less, but to think more clearly. Because clarity protects you from subtle manipulation better than restriction. Now the final piece is where everything becomes more empowering. You do not need to outsmart the entire system to improve your position. You only need to reduce the number of ways it quietly drains you. Even small reductions create space for stability to return gradually. And that space is what allows better decisions to emerge naturally. This is not about perfection. It is about direction. Because direction determines where compounding takes you over time. Now here is the part most people need to hear clearly. If money feels harder to manage lately, you are not imagining it. The system has become more complex, more fragmented, and more demanding. Old financial advice assumed visibility, stability, and predictable costs. Those assumptions no longer fully hold in today's environment. So confusion is not failure. It is a signal of change, a signal that your mental model needs updating, not abandoning. And once you update it, things begin to feel more structured again. You stop asking why everything feels expensive and start seeing where value is being quietly taken. That shift alone changes how you interact with money every day. If this perspective helped you see something you could not explain before, stay here. There is more beneath the surface of how money actually behaves, and most of it is hidden in plain sight. So take a moment and look at your own daily patterns. Where is money leaving quietly, without triggering your attention? That is where your next improvement is already waiting. Not in a new strategy, but in a clearer observation. Because awareness is what turns invisible pressure into visible choice. And visible choice is where control begins to return. Slowly, quietly, but more reliably than sudden change. You are not behind, and you are not doing it wrong. You are simply seeing more than you did before. And that awareness is already shifting your trajectory. Not dramatically, but in ways that compound over time, which is exactly how real financial stability is built. Not by avoiding the system, but by understanding how it actually works.